coming to you from the dark. The dark, dark, dark. My house.
I like it. It's creepy and mysterious. I've adjusted my camera. I like it better. There's
I'm more of an.
less
You have
stuff.
a more uniform. You have a more uniform light source because you have no natural light and unnatural light, synthetic light, man-made light competing. So you have a very consistent light source, which makes it
This is
easier
good.
sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you are forced to be an amateur lightomatologist? Is that not a thing?
So that's how we're doing it, huh? Words
Well,
on the
I don't
spot.
know. Are you a lightomatologist? A
Um,
professional or a gifted amateur? Have you ever thought about light and photography intentionally and conscientiously?
I like it. I like the results.
Interesting. That's you really walked yourself into a trap here.
Yeah.
Do you just want me to go straight for the juggler? I mean jugular.
Do we have jugglers tonight?
I'm not a juggle, but I'm not going to juggle. No, here's my prompt. If somebody makes something creative, particularly, but honestly anything, if they make it and the result is good, but the tools were amateurish or the tools were hacky or the technique is not there, what does that mean for the consumer of said creative thing? Art, music, movies, paintings, sculptures. Like, take your pick. I have so many examples here where I want to know, is the end result what we're going for? Full stop.
Yeah, that's a tough question. I
Well,
feel like
what you're
I
here.
f- yeah, I feel like I feel like intent is what's captured in the piece. I feel like especially if we're talking about art, I feel like regardless of the medium, there are a number of things where if I'm just judging the aesthetic, whether that's sound or visual, then that doesn't necessarily mean art to me. I feel like when someone has something to say and that's captured, that the technique is secondary to that.
Oh, I think I can probably agree with that.
For example, there are a million in music, but one that really comes to mind for me is a band called The Replacements. Uh,
People love them.
yeah, I'm a fan. I mean, I don't have T-shirts and stuff, but I own records, and I think um, lots of sloppy recordings. Maybe the mix is muddy. The if you're just judging the aesthetic, Rush beats them every time. But the band collectively had something to say, and they captured that sonically. And
Do
to
you
me,
do you dislike Rush for being overly technical?
no, not at all. I just don't listen to it.
Yeah. I don't listen to Rush. I mean, if I hear a Neil Peart drum solo, like I'm intrigued by it, sort of. I mean, I'm not intrigued by any drum solo per se, but the thing that's hard to get through instrumentally on a record is feeling that comes with music. So a when someone is just communicating the feeling, for that feeling to be caught on a recording of any kind. I don't care. Like, I don't care what it's recorded on. I don't care if it's the voice memo app on your phone or if it's the best mix ever. To capture feeling and emotion without the benefit of lyrics or singing, and to get that done just through instruments is pretty wild. So then you fall back on things like, composition, right? So classical music is full of feeling, but a lot of classical music has, just the emotion is not coming. It's not Kurt Cobain wailing heart-shaped box. It's a lot of things going on in the composition, which allows you to feel like build up and release and catharsis and, tension and all these things.
Isn't that more impressive in classical music though? Because oftentimes, not oftentimes, all the time, the piece was written by someone, and then a bunch of someones have to capture that same feeling.
Do you want to know something about classical music that is probably going to separate your childhood and my childhood a little bit? Like, this is my teenage years. I have a very vivid memory. I should preface this by saying I probably grew up slightly, maybe a little bit less privileged than this story suggests, but I took a trip with my German class, and one of the stops on the trip was Salzburg, Austria. And I remember one night that we were in Salzburg, we piled into a bunch of black Mercedes, which were taxis because this is Austria. And we went zigzagging up these cobblestone streets through the walls of, white stone sided buildings and like, big timber, alpine villagey looking stuff up to the top of this mountain to a literal castle. And then we went into some antechamber of the castle and we listened to some chamber music in a literal chamber. And I was like, I would not put this stuff on my morning commute to school. But in this context, this music is really connecting with me.
Yeah. I can't put my finger on that. I can't put my finger on a specific, like last night, I was with a friend. I love that story, by the way. I was with a friend last night, and she had never heard the Carter Family.
Oh, man.
And she'd heard of them,
Yeah.
obviously.
Well, no, I mean, not necessarily, obviously, but anyway.
Well, true. Very true. If you knew her, you'd say, obviously, she knows the Carter Family. And she did know them. Point is,
I'm sorry. I apologize.
oh, I contributed. The point is, we put on Wildwood Flower, and voodoo, magic. I don't know what it is, but whatever was captured with that song, and there are many Carter Family songs this way, it's haunting. And there are a bunch of other artists and songs recorded from that time period that have the same audio aesthetic, but haven't captured what that song captured. And I think the soul of the person comes out. This is not woo. Like, this is just the performer imparts their peace, their energy, their juice to the performance. And it's captured. When that's captured, I can't, and classical music does it. There are a lot of different styles and genres that do it, but there's something special to that.
Well, I think it's safe to say that an amateur can capture that, but the odds that the amateur captures it over and over again consistently as compared to a pro is kind of small.
But isn't that the definition of professionalism, though?
Oh, definitely.
Like
Right. But I mean, so I think the risk is that when you're talking about creative work, that professionalism is considered, potentially to be like operational things, logistical things, even professionalism. Sure, you can be a professional, but if you don't have the creativity, then it's not going to be good. Which that may be true. I don't know, but you can't creative your way through being unable to finish a piece, for example. You can't creative your way through being, I don't know, like so inaccessible that nobody can ever get to your art, meaning physically cannot get to your art because it's in your bedroom and like you refuse to be commercial to the point where nobody sees it.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would feel a little bit more strongly about your art being locked in your bedroom if it wasn't being publicly broadcast to the internet right now. And if you were a professional artist.
Yeah. Well, okay, so let's jump in that.
Like Clyde is out there. Your band, like people can find your band.
Does that make it professional?
No, the fact that it sounds the way it's supposed to and it's intentional and it is technically proficient is what makes it professional.
Yeah. I could do the gallery thing. I haven't enough pieces and could do that. I won't use the vulgar expression that I want to use, but I don't want to play the game. It's
Thank you for
a
not using any expressions
yeah.
about things between knees and belly buttons, front or back.
Yeah, that's okay. So, but that's my point. That's
How do you
what
feel about Jeff Koons?
Jeff Koons.
He makes the big metal but balloon animal sculptures. He's a contemporary sculptor.
Yeah,
You ever seen these big balloon animal dogs, but they're made out of metal? But he doesn't make them either. He's just like, we're gonna do this, and then he has his fabrication team make
yeah,
them.
yeah. No, the name rings a bell, but that's a fairly common name. So I don't know who he is.
Good, good. I'm glad. That means that if you ever run into him, he might have a chance of still being likable to you. And then when he's unlikable, you can just like judge for yourself.
I ran across a sculptor. She's Italian. She lives in Mexico, and just fantastic. And I can't remember her name, but
Thus concludes our episode.
yeah, I have a piece downstairs. She's a badass.
I don't own any sculpture. I probably own an original artwork, but nothing prominent. I probably own something signed and numbered. I haven't owned anything that I paid enough for like I remember paying a huge amount for the work, but I am enough of an art uh, liker. Lover's too strong a word. Enough of an art liker to refer to it as a work as opposed to a painting or a picture.
A
A
piece.
picture. Right. Calling it a work or a piece. That's the thing that separates you from the rabble.
The rabble.
Do you know Ai Weiwei? Do you know this guy?
Ai
He's a
Weiwei.
Yeah, he's Chinese. He's got like his claim to fame is he's a sort of a maybe not pro democracy, but certainly anti-establishment multimedia artist, meaning he has many different media. He has many different media in which he expresses his art. So the piece of his that I liked that was on display a long time here in DC was a carved marble sculpture of a security camera, like a closed circuit TV camera, and like this fine white marble sculpture. So I went and saw it, and the same exhibit had like furniture, it had marble, it had metalwork, it had a bunch of crabs glued together on top of each other, right? Like all these different ways that he was, saying the thing that he had to say. It had photography that he had done, like all this different stuff. And at that point, I am not a personal craftsman. I don't have a studio. I've never had a studio and I've never sold art professionally, but I looked at the woodworking and I'm like, this is not great work when it comes to the proficiency of what it's doing, right? Like there were bad joints. It wasn't, if you were there to see the woodworking, you'd be like, well, this is stupid. But if you're there to see some message that it was trying to get across, then you'd be like, this does what it's supposed to, right? And I don't know. I have a hard time even imagining woodworking as an artist with something to say. I almost feel like the statement of the woodworking is to make it not say anything, and you're just looking at how nice the joint is. But
Well,
I don't know. I don't want to trash woodworkers either.
okay. So what distinguishes? Can you build at least a preliminary template of what distinguishes um, a professional from an amateur?
Well, I can draw the most clear distinction, which is, did you get paid for it?
For
That's the whole
sure.
that's the whole point of the term, right?
For
If you're
sure.
doing it professionally, it's because you got paid for it.
But the connotations of professional versus
See, but
amateur.
I feel like those connotations are presumptuous and not something that I can take responsibility for, because everybody's got a different set of what the connotations are. I mean, I look, I'm not trying to purely be difficult. I'm only slightly trying to be difficult. I feel like I know what you mean, but I also feel like if forced to try and, reckon with the thing that you and I are both broadly in agreement about what it means to be professional, I'm going to go down a slippery slope, and pretty soon I'm going to say something that I don't mean. Because the result, like I was making music with one of my buddies, and we were trying to write this song, and I think we were probably using either a pre-recorded drum track or canned samples for the rhythm section. And I'm like, look at how easy this is to get these beats down. I did it like live right in front of him, and we had a full drum track, like bing bang boom, it's done. And he was like, yeah, this sounds good, but why? Like, why even do this? I'm like, well, because we're sitting in this literal room, and there are children asleep directly above us, so we're not going to have a drum kit down here. And then that led to a whole discussion, and I was like, well, isn't the point of it's crazy how easy it is to make this music, and I can get to something that sounds good so fast and without being that proficient with the tools. And isn't the whole point to make something that sounds good? Like, I don't want to be sitting here making the world's most gloriously artistic guitar and drum song that sounds like trash when I could have been making 15 really good songs that were 100% digital, and all we did was like write the song to what sounds good, and we were less worried about performing it, because like we're not going to gig the music anyway, so you might as well just make a recording that sounds good. And if that comes out of the computer, it comes out of the computer. And when I asked the question, I'm like, isn't the point to make something that sounds good? Dude just looks straight at me and goes, no, not at all. And I'm like, oh, I thought that was a rhetorical question. I thought, of course, the point was to make something that sounds good.
Did you make him clarify that very bizarre statement?
I mean, he basically, yeah, we talked briefly about it, but then we just stopped talking about it and made music. And the point I think he was trying to make was, I am here to make music, and the process and the figuring out and the trials and tribulations and the working through and the writing process, like that's the thing that he gets a thrill out of, not what it sounds like in the end. Because I think he's 3 steps ahead of me. He's like, no one's going to listen to this stuff. Like, whatever we make here, at most a few friends might listen to it. We're not going to make any effort to get it distributed. We're never going to make an effort to get it professionally recorded. So no, the point of the song is not to have it sound good. The point of the song is to like appreciate the craft as you're in it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but the craft is making something that sounds good.
Yeah, I see. But this is a problem, because by agreeing and by getting you into this position, it means that if I make computer based music and it sounds good and there's no guitars and no amplifiers and
That's
no
fine.
nothing else, and all I did was like press 3 buttons, I feel like a different conversation. You'd be like, I don't want to listen to that.
I told you I like rival. I told you I like rival consoles.
Well, so I think that there is a lot of good electronic music and a lot of bad electronic music. I think there's probably more bad electronic music than any other kind of music.
Dude, okay. Quick detour.
Please, please.
Same friend I mentioned Carter Family. The other night, there's an app called Radio.
Uh huh.
Have you heard of this?
No, I
You
feel like I know the name, but I mean it's a common word.
RADIOOOOO. Download this ASAP. These French guys, these French developers built it. You can click on any country in the world, choose any era, and play songs from that country, from that era. So Saturday night, we were listening
Nice.
to 70s Spanish music. And I cannot tell you how much I like that. To me is life. That to me is living. Like, having conversation and scoring this conversation was some really bad music from the 1970s out of Spain. Download the app. You will not regret it.
Are you a crate digger? Are you like a vinyl fan?
No,
Yeah.
I I like records that I like. I'm not a picker, salvager, collector of anything.
I love the modern contemporary analogy. So instead of sitting there thumbing through the stacks one record at a time, which was an enjoyable thing to do when I did that, the ability to bounce immediately from, oh, here's Spanish 70s guitar. Oh, did you hear this I'll pick a couple examples, for like real examples. Oh, well, what about the psychedelic folk from the 70s that was only happening in San Francisco? Well, here's we could pull it up on any service we want. Bang, it's right there. Or, oh, what about, I was listening to this in the car. I wanted some variety to my Christmas music. I drive like 5 minutes a day, so I wanted variety to the Christmas music. And I'm like, well, let's just see what the top 50 in Iceland is right now.
Oh, I love it.
And it was a mix of like English language Christmas songs, a bunch of Icelandic, presumably Christmas based on the jingle bells in the background. But I couldn't understand it. And it was, it's like, okay, here's new Christmas music I've never heard before that's in Icelandic. I don't think I'm going to get down with the with the meaning of the songs. But hey, it sounds like Christmas music with slightly different words. Cool. And then all of a sudden I've just injected this novelty into my Christmas music by doing nothing but saying like, basically shuffle countries. And like you couldn't do that when you had to go, oh, hey, let me go find the world music record store, which is, like potentially 10 miles away from the pop record store, which is potentially, nowhere near the place where you live. Like it was so inaccessible to try and get to that whack-a-mole bouncing from place to place in music. And I think when you're looking on the consumption side, ease is there. Like, there's literally no one who's like it's better when it's harder. But then when you talk about artistry and craft and creating the same stuff that we love having at our fingertips as a consumer of it, quick aside, I don't think it would be hard to find one person somewhere who's like got their scarf on all year and their little rectangle glasses, and they're like, I enjoyed the challenge of the hunt, and something is lost in the music today when you can just find all of it at your fingertips. I'm sure that person exists.
Oh, hell yeah, they
It's not hard to
exist.
find. It's not hard. But I'm
They,
like,
of
no.
course. Yeah.
Anyway, I wanted to hear directly and then contrast. I want to have a little pin where I put in that Terry says the music and what it sounds like is what matters. And then we will have the entire rest of our lives for me to revisit that and be like, Terry, are you sure it's the sound that matters? What
Okay,
about
so
the vibes, Terry? What
okay, so
about the vibes?
I will not ever say the sound matters. For me, what do I feel from the
Ah, yeah,
piece?
right, right.
That's what it is.
Have you had records or recordings where the recording sucked what would have been feeling out of the music?
No, oftentimes it's like the homemade biscuit thing, man. Oftentimes the jagged edges of the recording endear me to the recording if the thing captures. Now, I will say this: there are a handful. I'm a big fan of Guided by Voices.
Yeah.
There are a handful of their recordings that are so bad that it's like, all right, it just sounds bad. But no, for me, it's all, and you can hear it from 4 tracks. You can hear from 4-track recordings if something's been captured, or
Mm-hmm.
like the initial stages of something that's going to be refined into a masterpiece. You can hear that early on. And I've written a whole bunch of songs, and I can tell when one's finished, or even on like the melody of one or just snippet of the song, I can tell, okay, this feels a certain way. This is a thing. And then a whole bunch of like, there are some that I write and I'm like, okay, this is a filler. This is okay. This is okay. This'll do. But then there are some where it's just like, and that's on my little scale. The people who just do this. You mentioned this in our interview with Villet, and it's really the key. It's the key for what we're doing here. It's the key in creation of anything. Is just how much of it do you do? Because the sheer volume, the law of numbers states that if you do a whole bunch of something, unless you have no talent at all, no creativity, no talent. But if you do a whole bunch of something, some of that's going to be really good. Some of it's going to be really bad. And a lot of it's just going to be kind of eh. But that's what I feel like. I've written a bunch of songs. Some of it's objectively, decent. Some of it's just whatever. And some of it's, let's not record that one.
When I was a college radio disc jockey, I felt a no, maybe nobody said this to me. This might have been something that I was picking up a feeling from those around me, but I got the distinct impression that the notion that you're going to, work hard over a long time and get the repetitions in, that was that was considered, um I don't know, corporate. Like it was considered, um basically, like, it cheapened the experience of, I'm gonna smoke weed and produce brilliance, right? Like, we're all gonna sit around, and we're just gonna be creative to the point where the songs will materialize. I mean, there were people that were out there being hardworking bands, and I certainly don't think that there were some people who were 20 years old and had gotten that and were living it. And a lot of the bands that were good when they were, 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, a lot of those bands were basically doing a lot of work as bands from the time they were super young. And so by the time they're 20 and they've been putting out an album every year, they've done it. They've been in the studio a bunch of times. They've been through the process of writing. They've just done the thing, and they seem like they're creative and naturally gifted. And so everybody that starts a band when they're 19 instead of 14 is like, well, I'm also creative, or we got this creative guy and he's really creative, or we've got this singer and she's super creative and she's the force behind the band. But it's not enough if you just started and everybody else has a 6 year head start. Meanwhile, like, being 15 means that it's very unlikely that you got the practice regimen down to where you're really doing it the same way you'd be doing it when you're 30, or when you're like whatever. Like, it's not about age. It's more about, like, maturity and experience level. And I think that there's definitely backlash against the idea that you can work your way through it as opposed to creative your way through it. You know what I'm saying? Like, just write a better song and worry about it more. Some great artists, they only put out a little bit of, they have a small amount of output that we see,
That we
and
see. Yeah.
and it's all brilliant. All their stuff is amazing. Every album is fantastic, and they barely put anything out. Anyway.
Your point is a brilliant one, and I don't like to think of it that way. I like to think of art as divine,
Yeah.
as,
Right.
as some mysticism that's been harnessed and captured. It's just hard work. It's just discipline. It's the discipline of writing a lot. Now, where it really gets into epic is when the person is channeling something significant and meaningful and can take that into the discipline of writing or creating and captures that in that process. Like, really good at the craft, but also capturing something to say. Those are the people that really resonate with me.
I was gonna say, I feel like it can be both. I mean, these things are
It
not in
can.
conflict.
Yeah.
There's the in German Blitz von Himmel, the shot from heaven, and that's, that type of lightning in a bottle situation is not. It's not that it doesn't exist. It does exist, and it exists for people that write tons of stuff or produce a lot of art or work all the time, and it works for people who've basically done, like, next to nothing. And you're gonna get it more often if you're doing more stuff. But, like, there's absolutely that spark. Another example. Let's go away from music. So, um, I volunteer at the kids' school, and I guess the fourth graders were doing a Georgia O'Keeffe unit, and there was this whole little documentary we watched. The kids watched. I watched with them, and here's the art that Georgia O'Keeffe did. And, like, I know Georgia O'Keeffe from sort of macro paintings of flowers. Yeah, but, like, there was all this other stuff she did. She did, like, desert skies in the Southwest for over a decade of work. And it's like, these are really good paintings. I wouldn't have known they were Georgia O'Keeffe because there's not a gigantic flower in it. You know what I'm saying? And she lived to 98 years old, and she just painted and 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 painted. And a lot of it was good.
I mean, you can go through a lot of, especially my favorite artists, and what they're known for is not what they always did. That's what it evolved to,
Right.
or they found their voice in that and did a whole bunch of that. Probably it's they were in, and I know this in my limited non-professional painting, is like you find the thing that makes you feel good about doing it, and you want to do a lot of that. Now,
Yeah.
if that also happens to be something somebody wants to pay you money for, then that's how you become, known for those sort of particular styles. I don't think any of this, and this is what I wanted you to say earlier, that I knew I would have to end up saying, is I don't think you can manufacture any of this, but I don't think you can get it out without doing it a whole bunch of times either. I don't think you just start doing something, whether it be music or art, and it's just awesome and it's divine and it's captured. I think that's elicited through a lot of. There's a whole bunch of scrap paper in the trash can before the thing is polished, and that's what people see.
Even if that's not true, which by the way I do think that's true, but even if that's not true, there's clearly more examples where there was a lot of repetition first and then fast success than there are immediate success or instant success without the build up to it.
Yeah.
Clearly, overwhelmingly more examples where it was like work, 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 success.
But I would say even in that scenario, and it's possible, it's possible. I think of like the band that comes to mind for me in that scenario is Kings of Leon.
Yeah.
Not a huge fan of theirs. I like a record or two. Okay. But they were not rock and roll band for a long time, but they grew up in Pentecostal church and were playing music in their church, and just started a rock band when they, went through their rebellious late teen years and early 20 years. Um, and so, yeah, they weren't cranking out rock records and refining, honing that craft, playing the club circuit or whatever, but they were, something led to that. And I think that's the case in a lot of instances, like maybe an Eminem or somebody like that. He's doing this somewhere. He may not be on a stage somewhere touring and gigging and building a local following like the story I heard of Ed Sheeran, but there's a creative genesis that happens. I don't think somebody goes from today I'm an accountant to tomorrow I'm a world famous artist, unless they've, like, it's one of those, I was struck by lightning and I could do, I learned Chinese,
How
one of those
close
things.
how close did you get to being a working artist? Any medium, music, painting, whatever else. How close did you get to that? And then
Oh,
compare that to how close you got to be a working baseball player.
I had all the opportunities in the world to be a working baseball player. All the opportunities in the world. I'll leave it at that. I was a pitcher, and I had I had a bunch of opportunities as a musician in my early 20s, and this is in line with our conversation. I wrote some songs in a first iteration of the band, and got with guys that have been lifelong friends, and we wrote garbage, but we did it. But the next iteration of that was with three new players, and one of the guys I teamed up with, Josh, I've been friends with and played with for a long time. I really learned to write with him, but we locked ourselves in my basement for a year and a half and just wrote and played and wrote and played. And we were so cohesive and had refined the songs that we'd worked on. We had a lot of chances too. I've mentioned this on here before. I've always been a contrarian with music, and uh, viewed it as art, and I didn't want to try to make it. I had that punk rock ethos, except I've come to learn that those people still try to make it. There is no punk rock ethos. If you make it successfully, you're trying to be a successful band in whatever way you want to do it. There are very
I
few
think that's
people.
important. You don't
Yeah,
you don't get there by accident.
it doesn't happen. It does not. That's why the shy rock star thing. I love it. I love it. They're the thirstiest people on the face of the earth. I love that
Where
shit.
did you
Like,
even learn the word thirsty?
I don't know. Hang out with the kids.
Oh yeah, your own kids. That would do it.
Yeah.
So you basically you could have made it in baseball. Was the baseball over when the music
Oh
when
yeah.
you locked yourself in the basement?
Yeah, but I mean, I played baseball in 25 and over leagues up until like 6 years ago. So
Was it a hard stop on baseball where you're
yeah,
like, I'm not going to go pro. I'm not going to pursue the things that I have to pursue here. I'm not going to inject steroids into my butt, and instead I'm going to go make music now for a while.
that wasn't the music
It
came
wasn't a straight
later.
transition.
Yeah.
It wasn't a
No, it
straight transition, but there was a gap in between those two.
yeah,
Okay.
probably 3 years. Two.
You weren't like playing college ball while also trying to be a touring band.
I didn't know how to play the guitar when I was playing college baseball.
You oh right, you would have been a touring drummer at that point.
Definitely not. No, no one would have had me.
You could have been a singing drummer. You're no, you're not
I
left-handed, are
was
you?
I was Don Henley in the making.
Are you left-handed or right-handed?
I'm right-handed.
Oh, could have
If I would
because if you're what if you were left-handed pitching singing drummer?
if I were
Forget it, man. You're
left-handed,
done. You would have made it. You
if
would have
I
made it immediately.
there is zero doubt if I pitched exactly the way I pitched right-handed but left-handed, for sure would have made it. A left-hander back then throwing 90 miles an hour. This was a while ago. Now these guys are ridiculous, but a left-hander back then throwing 90 miles an hour would have been fast tracked to the big leagues, to professional baseball.
Wow. If I was if I was stronger and faster and good at baseball, I also totally would have had a shot.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you know what's
Okay.
weird?
So hold on. I have to close the book on this. I just yes or no answer on the band and on the baseball and on the art. I'm just gonna based on the background and the hinting that you could have done some gallery stuff. I'm just going to assume that like if you wanted to be a pro artist, you could go be a pro artist and maybe not starve. So is it the yes or no answer is all you need to give. Is it self sabotage?
No, it's not sabotage. It's self governance.
Like you'd rather do something else, basically.
I'd rather do something else. I don't
That's
want,
important.
I don't, there's the level of pretentiousness associated with that whole circuit is not my thing. It's not my thing at all.
I think it would be hard. There are a lot of things that you have in your life now that would be difficult to maintain, and a lot of other things that you would then be forced to maintain. And I think you'd find that frustrating.
Yeah. Like if I'm going to unpack what you just said in very direct language, I would have a huge pay cut probably if I were to try to survive just on paintings.
Yeah, but it's not just that. I mean, money's not everything. Having a
No,
huge pay cut and feeling like you still have to suck up to everybody at
that
the same time.
that is exactly it. That I have found, and this is another segment, another conversation. I have found, and this is no joke, the only group of people, because I'm like my business world, I've worked really hard to keep all my worlds separate. The only group of people I've found as I've gotten more comfortable talking about like who I am authentically, all the things that I'm into, that I have to change my conversation. Like I can't talk about my day job with my artist and musician friends. It's the only group of people that I have to change who I am to be around.
Well, I mean, first of all, I'm not entirely sure you have to. And second of all, the older you get, the less that's going to be the case.
Oh, I don't. I just don't talk about my work. Like I don't talk about like my day job at all.
Oh man, for me, the lines get blurrier and blurrier. I'm like, I don't. There's no boundary whatsoever. And I'm not saying that as a feature or a bug. I'm simply, it's just everything is everything, all bleh, right, in one big blob of Play-Doh.
That's the way my life is too. That's the way my life is too. It's just I can't talk about work with my artists. I mean, these are people who like this. That's their life, art and music. Exactly what you were talking about earlier with me in the art gallery circuit. That's what my friends who that's their world. That's what they do, and that doesn't age well. I'm just saying.
I think my friends are more. I don't think my friends are as dedicated or as singular focused as your friends. Which like
For sure.
whichever circle you're talking about. I don't know any really hardcore my life is art people. I literally don't know anyone like that. I know my closest friends who are artists are either graphic designers or and literally just working a corporate job doing graphic design, or have some other corporate job and they have a art centric side business where they are doing well as an artist, but it's they also have a 9 to 5. uh I know I know one artist who it's basically, he's a machinist, right? So I know him as a machinist, not first as an artist. And like if he has machinist friends, I would be in that circle. If he has artist friends, I would not be in that circle. And also like our kids are the same age and we're in the same kind of general region. So I feel like I just talk to him about machining, which is my main thing. I basically don't talk to him about art for the most part. I mean, like I
You,
follow all of this stuff, but like I basically don't talk to him about art. And so that's the lack of focus is, I don't have the band friends either. I don't have friends that are like, I'm in a band. That is who I am.
you do not understand. You do not understand the lifestyle difference of the dedicated artist musician, whether it's cover band or I teach lessons and I play in 14 bands. Like the person that's dedicated their life to art and music, you do not understand the template, the personality that is this person. These are not fun people to be around by and large. I
Do you want to hear
promise
do you want to hear a weird transition to take it out?
you. Yes.
This is going to be an odd one. There's a video. I'm gonna explain this as if you're an alien. There's a video game series about racing cars that is very realistic. It's called Gran Turismo. There's been 5 or 6 or 8 of them in the series or something like this. It's out of Japan, meaning it's developed in Japan, but it's a worldwide phenomenon. There was a movie not long ago inspired by the game, and I want to say that the movie featured a driver who had become a professional e-racing driver, meaning they played video games racing cars uh, competitively for money, like for prizes in this video game world. And then there was a whole like the central tension of the film adaptation of a video game series was not like we're just going to race cars. It was how do you take this virtual driver who's amazing at video games and how do you put them on a track with a real car and be like, you now have to be fit and you now have to drive with actual physics and not just eyeballs in front of like not just your eyes. And it's about it's a fictionalization of the kid who made it from esports driver to actual race car driver. Now that's all just to paint a scene of what the Gran Turismo universe is, one that you will never ever directly encounter in your life in any form. But the guy who made the creative mind, I guess he's the producer or whatever of these games, or the lead developer or president of the company or whatever. There's a long interview with him about the sacrifices he's made to make these games happen over the last 25 years, about his legacy and whether whether someone will pick up the weight after he's left. And the documentary like kind of does some interviews with his kids. And they're like, oh, he was very distant. He really wasn't involved. He kind of like he just treated the game as his kids. I'm nothing to him. And then they cut to the guy. Like I might be, since I can't even remember his name, I feel comfortable doing a disservice by misquoting him. But then the documentary quotes to the guy who made these games, and he's like, "The game is my child. This is more important than anything I could have ever created.
Oh my
This is more
word.
important than anything I could have ever done as a father."
Oh my
And
God.
I'm like, well, that was a twist I didn't see coming.
I mean, at least he had the decency to say it. I think that's an unstated position for far too many people, but that's harsh.
So harsh.
Yeah, that's harsh.
But if I'd have said the same thing about like a universe that was obviously art as opposed to video game car racing,
Yeah,
it's almost easier to be like, if you've created, I mean, shoot, if you're Georgia O'Keeffe and it's like my life is painting, and my kids, the legacy I leave my kids and the way I've raised them is through my painting. I don't know that I don't think she ever said that or anything even like it. I don't even know if she has kids, but you'd be like, yeah, was an incredible painter, and that's a weird way to raise kids. But if your whole life is painting, sure, that makes sense. Now, like, dang, imagine your whole world was video games about driving cars fast.
ugh.
Take that and ponder on it, Terry. Next time you're worried about the state of humanity, that's one for you to pull back up.
Yeah, no, there's no pondering needed for that one. I'll just
Just pure snap judgment right away.
send that to the trash bin of depravity. That's not a position I can respect.
I don't know, man. The craft.
I do. I do. I'll leave it at that. I admire people who are excellent at what they do, because you have to have that mentality of this is your world, and it's that singular focus. I like too many things. I want to do too many things to be that singularly focused on one thing. But the people who are, hopefully they can maintain human relationships, but I respect that just singular focus.
I'll see you next time, Terry.
Oh, all right, my man.